Lads, good evening. Delighted to be here again on our monthly lads call. I'm delighted to have Gareth Russell with me. Gareth's a friend of mine in Newcastle. He's a Juice Plus person. He's been a media personality around the place. And I don't know how far and wide that spreads, but I'll let Gareth do all of that. And we're here tonight, how to improve our listening and how important it is around listening. So without further ado, welcome Gareth Russell to the Lads Community Call. We will place this in the Lads Call messenger group tomorrow. And yeah, welcome along, young Gareth. How's things going?
Going really well, thanks, Mick. And as soon as you invited me onto something called a Lads Call, because it's been a long time since I was called a lad, I was happy to sign up. So it's good to be here. And yeah, you mentioned radio or mentioned media. It was radio for me for 35 years. And the irony was that for that 35 years, I was broadcasting to listeners. But in the course of all that and other things that I've done, I decided that focusing on listening was a great way to go. So I used to do a talk called The Power of Storytelling, which is kind of understandable. We need to be able to tell stories, but to me, the ability to listen, even though it's so ingrained in us, is not necessarily something that comes easy to people. So I guess tonight I just wanted to give my take on it, share a bit of my story and as to how I got to this point.
Absolutely.
At 66, I think the thing that has always been in my favor, and I thank my dad for this, is he instilled in me a sense of curiosity. So when people talk about, and I guess I've been asked over the years, and I've done thousands upon thousands of interviews, whether it be on radio. I have had a business on and off called A Life Recording, where I sit down and interview people about their lives. More often than not, it's an older family member. But I've interviewed some younger people as well, just to get their life on film for them so they can share it with their families and friends.
Yeah.
And people ask what makes a good interviewer. And I guess it just evolved for me. And I realized I was lucky that I was encouraged from a very early age to be curious.
Yeah.
And as I said, I think you think back to what we were like when we were living in caves, and we had to listen. We had to listen to that person who just come into the cave saying, you might not want to go out that way. There's a saber-toothed tiger just around the corner. They're going to eat you. Or you might want to listen because they want to tell you where there's some, sort of some animals that you can catch and kill and feed your family with. So back in those days, listening was kind of kept us alive.
Yeah.
So it's always been ingrained in us. We've always innately been good listeners, but I think we tend to get too busy sometimes, I think, to listen. We tend to get a bit insecure about listening. I think we tend to worry that, I mean, I've even heard people say, I don't want to ask too many questions because people will think I'm being nosy.
Yeah.
If you're coming from a place of curiosity, no one is going to be concerned about the fact that you want to find out a bit about them. And I realized this when I first started. I mentioned my life recording business. So I started that about 2010. I've been working in radio predominantly for many years, and I just had this flash of an idea for a business. And it came from a conversation I was having with someone. And it was just in the course of that conversation, I just thought, I think it'd be great to start interviewing people on film about their lives. And I guess I realized later on one of the reasons for that was that at the age of 22, I lost my dad. He was only 48.
Yeah.
And I had a handful of photos of him.
Yes.
And that was it. I had no recordings of him. I couldn't remember how he sounded. There was a bit of a gap, a bit of a hole. So I thought, well, if I can help people capture stories of their loved ones, that can sort of that can mean an awful lot to them. The only thing I didn't know, I knew I'd interviewed people before, but I didn't know that I could get a stranger to feel comfortable enough to share their personal story. So I started with my father-in-law. The next client I had was his sister. So they were both people I knew.
Yes.
Next person was someone who had been referred to me by their daughter. Their mother was well into her 80s. I think she was 88. She'd never met me before, and her daughter just said, "Would you go around to my mum's place and interview her?" And all her mum knew was this stranger was coming around to ask her a whole lot of questions on film.
Right.
What could possibly go wrong? So this
Yes.
lovely lady, Glenys, met me at the door. I had my camera gear. I wandered in. I started setting up. I had a cup of tea with her, and I just sat down and started asking her questions about her life. And she shared answers. She shared her life with me, and I went away and thought, well, A, this is going to work, and B, questioned why it could work. And once again, I came back to that conclusion that obviously it was my new business,
Yeah.
and I was doing it for the family, but I was genuinely interested in what she was going to say.
Yeah.
And I think if we can find ways to find that curiosity and be really honest and understand that by listening to people, we learn. By listening to people, we give them the opportunity to work their own stuff out. Because what I've seen from behind the camera time and time again, and when I ask someone really something simple like, what did it feel like to become a parent for the first time? They've never been asked that question, and they might be 90 years old.
Yes.
And this
Yeah.
little light bulb comes on and they go, wow.
Mm.
As they're telling me what it meant, it's triggering all these feelings of
Yes.
joy and pride, and
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so much value to the person we're sitting with. There's so much
Yeah.
value to them, and there's so much value to us
Yes.
to ask questions.
Is it, and I'm sure, well, is it true to say that you learn as much, you broaden your own horizon by even asking the question and receiving the answer?
Yeah, well, I think I think when you asked me to sort of give you a one-liner about tonight, the quote that I saw not that all that long ago was, "Wisdom doesn't come from talking. Wisdom comes from listening."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think to get back to the world we live in a world where, whether it be social media, whether it be talkback radio, we do live in a world where people have opinions, which is fine, but people are sort of stuck in that opinion, and all they want to do is keep sharing that opinion and keep telling you what they think. I mean, I feel it all the time, and I don't know whether it's because I'm a natural question asker,
Yeah.
but so often I'll be at a dinner party or I'll be out, and I'll start asking. And what I've started doing is I'll go down that normal path of asking questions.
Yeah.
But if that person doesn't respond, I kind of just I sometimes I just stop
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
sit there in uncomfortable silence.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with that,
Yes.
because rather than keep facilitating the conversation, I just sometimes sit there and go, I wonder how long it'll be
Yeah.
before this person thinks to ask me a
Yeah. Yeah.
question. And I'm not
Yeah.
being judgmental. I guess I'm just being observant
Yeah.
of what we can struggle with. You can see a young couple sometimes, and I mean we've all been there, I guess, when we've been on a date, back in our younger years when I was a lad, and I'd ask a girl out and I'm trying to impress her, and all I would do is I'd talk to her and tell her about myself,
Yeah.
which is not going to impress her at all. She's going to
No.
sit there going, this guy's as boring as you know what.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's that lovely story that comes from that, and I recommend, if you haven't ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People, a book written in the 30s by Dale Carnegie. And I paraphrase this story, and I probably get it wrong, but the essence of the story is right. Where he went to a party, and all he did at that party was ask questions of people. And he'd say, hi, I'm Dale. And he would just ask them questions and get
Yeah.
them talking. The feedback he got from the friend who held the party was, because Dale Carnegie said, well, what can you give me any feedback? And the feedback was, there were a number of people at that party thought that you were the most fascinating person they'd ever met.
Wow.
And they knew nothing about him. All
Yeah.
all he said was, "My name's Dale. Tell me
Yeah.
about you."
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it's just an indication that that we need that we feel we people need to feel listened to. People need to feel like they matter. And as much as I can bang on about it and how I sort of give talks on it and how I've sort of talked about my background and how I've come to this point, there are times with our 19-year-old son. I'm thinking back to when he was 14 and 15, and
Yeah.
he'd come home from school, and I'd be working from home, and Oliver would come in and he'd want to tell me about his day.
Mm.
And I go, "Mate, I'm on a call right now, or I'm, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm working. I'm busy."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I've been guilty as the next person, or with Suze, my wife.
100%.
If I'm distracted by something, if I'm too busy
Yes.
to listen, I'll kind of shut down. And I just think that's the most disrespectful thing you can do when someone wants to share something with you. I think
Yeah.
it can verge on disrespect.
Yeah. And look, given the number of decades we have behind us, Gareth, there's loads of times I've done that with probably Celine, my own family, and the kids, and I'm sure the lads who will look at this will, if they're honest with themselves, will say exactly the same thing. Just got in a mindset, in a groove, and ignored everything else. And when you think back at it, it is disrespectful, because people are entitled to be excited, share their story, update what's going on, particularly with kids and parents. They're the minutes that you want to have, at your fingertips the whole time, instead of then, ignoring it then and then trying to reclaim that minute an hour or two later when that actual moment is long gone.
Yeah,
Long
because
gone.
the feeling that person who wants to share that story has kind of deflates them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of, well, obviously what I have to say is not important, or I'm probably even worse, I'm not important enough for you to sit there and put the phone down, put your pen down, and just
Yes.
maybe it doesn't have to take forever.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not like you're just going to sit there for hours. They just want to tell you a bit about their day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that requires a fair degree of awareness and maturity just to capture that second and compartmentalize what you're doing, and, as you say, stop for a minute and chat.
Yeah.
I've got a query. You mentioned 2 minutes ago, Dale Carnegie at a party, and his question was, "Hi Dale, sorry, I'm Dale. Tell me about you."
Yeah.
How hard do people find it to tell anybody about themselves?
Well, I guess you don't start with necessarily I guess I was paraphrasing to the point where
Yeah.
A question, and look, it's interesting because I'm in a new workplace at the moment. I've only been there for about 2.5 months. And once again, I'm not sanctifying myself when I say this, but I guess I've just got used to being interested in that person.
Yeah.
And it could be, there's lots of people I've only just got to know, but when I ask them how they are, I mean it.
Yes.
I'm not shying away. I'm not just doing it. How are you? And then move on. It's like I acknowledge their response. It
Yeah.
takes 5 seconds, but it's just being genuine.
Yeah.
Just how are you? And doing it in a way that you genuinely are interested. And I think, a lot has been made of Are You OK Day,
Yes.
which I think is wonderful, but a lot has also been suggested, like, why do we have to make it a day? Do we all care for a day and then move on? Or do we,
Yeah.
when we ask someone if they're okay, if our intention behind that is to really know and
Yeah.
really find out, it's just a simple switch. It's just a simple change of intention
Yeah.
that people respond to.
Yes.
So I guess getting back to your question, when I meet someone, I don't necessarily just say, "Tell me about myself, and I try to resist this at parties, and I struggle like everyone else when you meet someone at a party. So what do you do?
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that question because
No, I agree.
as human beings, we can tend to judge people based on their answer.
Yes.
If someone turns around and says, I'm a traffic cop,
Yeah.
or I'm an insurance salesman, or like my dad was an insurance salesman.
The
So
insurance salesman will have a problem.
yeah, well, Dad was an insurance salesman. God love him, but he seemed to work around that. People still loved him, but yeah, that those sort of questions you sound like you're pigeonholing someone.
Yeah, yeah,
Or have you been overseas lately?
yeah,
So it's those questions that I think are a bit more based on curiosity and based on just wanting to getting to know that person a bit.
yes,
So I can't tell people what to ask, but I think if you couch that, I'd like to learn a bit about you. And I guess one of the things I've done over the years is I've done some, they call it team building, but I've worked with businesses and organizations where I'll get a group of people together, and I guess I play the interviewer, and I get people one by one in front of their workmates to come and sit and have a chat with me. And sometimes that chat will be 10 minutes. But in the course of that chat, I'll just ask people, sometimes and you wouldn't necessarily do this at a party, but it could be something as simple as, what did you want to do when you grew up? As a kid,
yeah,
what do you want to be? And those really sort of simple questions can be really illuminating. And sometimes I'll throw those into those conversations in those teams.
mm,
And people automatically go, I didn't know that about you. And
mm,
it
mm,
it just we automatically are looking for ways that we can connect, or things that make us similar, things we have in common. And so
yes,
often I have people come up at the end going, well, I didn't know that this guy, I do it in business groups as well, where people come from different, walks of life or
yes,
networking groups. And we have speed networking, and I get people just to spend 5 or 10 minutes with someone that they don't know and just ask them some questions. And the
yeah,
room just lights up.
yeah, yeah,
It gets buzzy with curiosity. And as I said at the end of it, people going, I actually went to school with that person and I didn't even realize it.
yeah, yeah,
And it's this lovely way of finding out what we have in common rather than what sets us apart.
yes,
We've heard of it. If you think of the issues we have with, sort of minority groups that
yeah,
are already being judged, whether they be Indigenous, whether they be disabled, whether they be different sexual orientation,
yeah,
we automatically have this tendency to go, well, I'm not going to agree with you because we think differently. You're this and I'm that.
yeah,
We tend not to try and break those walls down just by having conversations going, well, at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
yeah,
That makes
yeah,
us really, really similar.
yeah.
We
No,
have the
absolutely.
same emotions. We go through the same human experiences. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about those things that we have in common.
Yeah, yeah. Things like the "or are you okay" day. Your comment is brilliant because yeah, it shouldn't be confined to a day. It should be any day of the week, and
Yeah,
I'm sure anybody walking around the planet watching this, listening to us, will see there'll be half a dozen occasions in your day, no matter where you are, where you'll be able to answer that question. And there'll be a feeling as well. You'll get a sense that somebody actually probably waiting for the question. They just probably need the question asked and a hug at the end of it.
yeah,
I would appeal to
yeah,
anybody who may be ending watching this, don't waste that opportunity because you never know what you might be doing.
yeah. And that fear of, if I ask them if they're okay, or if I ask them how they are and they're not great, so what do we
Yeah,
do next? We don't have to do anything. We just listen.
yeah, yeah,
I do it to I do it to Suze. I think blokes are good at this. Much to the chagrin of our wives sometimes, where Suze will say, "Oh, this has happened and that's happened. Well, this is what I reckon you should do." And
yeah,
Suze will go, "Don't fix it. Don't tell
yeah,
me what to do. Just listen." So,
yeah,
as I said, as much as I bang on about being a good listener, listening starts listening starts at home as
yeah.
well.
Well, I mean, one of the things, and it's one of these meme things doing the rounds, been doing the rounds forever. that like people listen only to reply, so that they're hearing the words. It's going from left ear to right ear,
Yeah.
only so they can interject, and then, as you say, jam in their own point of view or jam in their own opinion on what's going on.
Absolutely. And once again, this is a frailty or a failing, I suppose, sometimes. It can be any of us, where someone will ask me a question and go, tell me a bit about that. And I'll be halfway through telling them, and they'll go, well, this is what happened for me.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's like jumping into a skipping rope.
Yeah.
They're waiting to jump in so they can start skipping, and you're just standing there holding the rope, going, "Oh, well, I'll just facilitate your story rather than sort of share with your mind." So it's like, and the person that's leaning forward, waiting for you to stop, waiting for that gap in your conversation, in your story, going, well, and then so. Yeah, I mean, I've been guilty of it. It's not perfect, and I sometimes have to pick myself up.
Yeah. Now, when we came on first, Gareth, you were talking about you had some stories. Do you want to share a couple of stories around this?
Yeah, I do. There's one in particular that that people have asked me in the past, of the thousands of interviews that you've done, whether it be on radio or elsewhere. What's the one that stands out the most? And I guess people might be expecting it to be an entertainer or a politician or just someone famous. And the story I love to tell is about a gentleman called Harry Power, who was, when his daughter came to me, and this is quite some time ago, he lived in Warrabrook, just down the road here in Newcastle. And it was part of my life recording service. And his daughter said, look, she reached out to me. I called her back and she said, look, she said, I'll cut to the chase. He's riddled with cancer. He's been given 3 months. He was given 3 months to live 6 months ago. He's decided he wants to tell his story. Would you come and have a chat with him? So I turned up at Harry's place, and Pat, his wife, was there, and you could see that Harry was a very unwell man. He was probably about 80, 79, 80. He was a very religious man. He used to he was making rosary beads, I should say, just to keep himself busy.
Yes.
So I sat down, set my camera up as I always do, and we started the interview. And it turned out Harry had a really difficult life. He was only a very, very small child when he was literally reefed out of his sister's arms and put into foster care. He was put into a not even foster care, it was an orphanage, basically, because his dad was fighting in the war, in the Second World War, and his young sister was looking after him, and they went, no, you can't do that. So he was put in this home, and he stayed there until his teens. And as a very young boy, they mistreated him terribly. I don't think it was abuse of some sort. He had the love of learning beaten out of him. They were just horrible, cruel people. And as he got a bit older, Harry started looking after the younger kids. So his job as he became into his early teens was to protect the younger kids from these horrible, sort of people that were running this home. He left there when he was about 15, started working for his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law treated him really badly. Not long after that, he was conscripted or went to fight in the Korean War. And this is where the story was really interesting and really impactful, because while he was fighting, he was injured in a mortar attack.
Yep.
And some of the soldiers he was fighting with were killed. Some of his superiors were killed. Obviously, Harry wasn't, but he had this really weird void, this blank in his life where he didn't know what happened next. He honestly didn't know how he got back to Australia. He said he didn't know whether he kept fighting. He didn't even know how badly injured he was. It was almost like he'd been put under a general anaesthetic and then woke, and suddenly there he was.
Yeah.
Anyway, he told that part of his story, then went on to talk about how he became a dad and how he got into the church and how he became a grandfather. And we finished the interview. So I always do these interviews chronologically, obviously. And at the end, I said, Harry, look, I just want to I want to thank you on behalf of your family for telling your story. That was incredible. And what I saw in Harry was a physical change. Harry said, well, he said, actually, it's really interesting. He said, I feel quite different. Thank you very much. He said, I've never told that story before about the Korean War. He said, it's never left my lips. And the camera was still rolling, and I can't show you the vision, but I've shown it to people when I've done this talk. You could see Harry physically look different. He said and looked like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. So I took the vision away. I put photos to it. I gave it to his family. They were delighted. They thanked me very much. And then 10 months later, I got an email from Harry's daughter, and I could see who it was from. And before I read the email, I thought, well, that's amazing. I'm presuming Elaine's telling me that Harry's passed away.
Yeah.
She was actually telling me that Harry had made a remarkable recovery and was alive and well. He'd had people from the church coming to visit him. He had all these people wanting to find out what had changed. And I mean, I've never said it was that alone, but it seemed to me something I'd seen had changed in Harry. Some years later, I decided to reach out because I was working with someone who said, wouldn't it be great if you could do that for war veterans and tell their stories? So I rang Harry's house, and Pat, his wife, picked up, and I had to tread very carefully because I said to Pat, look, I did this interview with Harry. I'd like to see if I could maybe share it because blah, blah. And she cut me short and she said, well, Harry's right here. It's actually his 84th birthday tomorrow. Do you want to have a chat with him over the phone?
Oh, brilliant.
He was still with us.
Yeah, brilliant.
He lasted another couple of years. He actually died not from cancer. He had other complications.
Yes. Yeah.
But I got to talk at his eulogy even. I got to deliver a eulogy at his funeral, and I was just so blessed. So when I think about that story, there's no other interview that I could possibly hold a candle to that had that impact on me, because to me it was the fact that I'd listened to Harry, that I gave him the space, I gave him the safe space for him to tell that story in the course of his whole life. And I'm not saying that maybe it was luck in a way because he was talking about his whole life, but in the course of his life was that story that he never shared.
Yeah.
And that just and sometimes when I'm telling that story, I get not sometimes, every time, particularly when it's a group of people and I show them that footage.
Yes.
I get quite emotional because
I can understand that.
I can see, I honestly believe that the power of listening is immense.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be difficult. It's something, as I said, we're hardwired to do.
Yes.
You said it before, Mick, we need to use a bit of self-awareness, exercise self-awareness. And when we are talking to someone, maybe stop and think, well, maybe do they want to share something with me? Just read the room. And I guess because of the years I've spent presenting, I feel that I'm quite good at reading a room, and if I see people switching off, I either wrap it up or think about what I'm saying and whether it's particularly interesting or not.
Yeah.
But I just think it's that awareness piece. It's and the two things we talked about it before. What can I learn from this person?
Yeah.
Not what can I tell them about me, but what can I learn from this person? What benefits am I going to get? It's almost getting selfish, but it's a reverse selfishness. It's like by giving them the space to talk.
Yep.
I'm giving them the gift of being able to share something, but I'm going to get something from it as well. And it's that mutual thing.
100%. I think, again, you've hit nails squarely on the head, Gareth. It is a two-way thing. It removes any questions that you might have had in your head about that individual because you have them answered.
Yeah.
And it gives them the time and the space to talk about themselves, talk about stuff they may not have, as in Harry's case, may not have mentioned before. And that clearly then lifts an enormous weight. And that would be a significant weight on this guy's shoulders for 40, 50 years.
Yeah,
potentially, and
yeah,
that's a lot of weight to be carrying around for that length of time.
yeah. And there's a saying, if you'll excuse the expression, I think so many of the issues that we have with ill health, ill mental health, it's it's the fact that we're not dealing with our shit. And
Yeah.
I think if we're given a space to encourage to do that,
Yeah.
it makes it a lot easier, because otherwise
Yeah.
we're going to bottle it up. We're going to bottle it up, and it's going to come back in ways.
Yeah.
You know, they say a lot of disease or a lot of illness. I think of my dad, who fought bladder cancer for 8 years. He was an otherwise healthy human being. And I sometimes wonder whether my dad, who struggled with financial issues for years and years and years, dad was terrible with money. And he would, on the surface, be really calm.
Yeah.
But as I got older afterwards, I realized, in talking to my mum, the stress that he must have been under that he never dealt with.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wonder whether that could have been the cause of
Yeah.
his cancer. I don't know, but it's been proven. There's been enough studies
Oh,
done that
absolutely.
intense, sustained stress
Yeah.
um, can have a horrible effect on us physically, mentally, and physically.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, 100%. I cannot disagree with that. And you would know, and the lads would know, I am heavily involved in a homeless charity here in Newcastle.
Yep.
And the only art that's required on a Friday night is listening.
Yep.
Because there's lots of people there, and we our only job is to listen to their day, their week, their whatever. And the amount of people that we see come back, and we've seen people there for the last 8 or 9 years, as long as I've been doing it,
Yeah.
because they feel like they're being heard. There's no improvement as such in their day-to-day lives, but they can come along and feel relaxed. They can get whatever they need to get. They can feel they can come along and at least drop the protective guard muzzle they have on. So when they're here, they can just for an hour relax and then go off and do what they need to do with that. So listening is an incredibly powerful tool. If you are just prepared to sit, shut up, and open your ears,
Yeah.
it is genuinely a very powerful tool. I was reminded as you were talking there, Gareth, about what was the wording again? Can't remember. But there's another art of listening as well, and we spoke about this off camera before we get on, and it's about listening to your body. And you know, for those who don't know, on the screen, I've come out of hospital, and Gareth is recently out of hospital as well, from things that we did not listen to or didn't listen intently enough to. And whilst there's a mental health perspective to the stress, as you said about your dad, there's also a physical stress around about not listening to your body. In my case, it was a couple of hernia. That's been accumulation of 60 years of football and running and jogging and golfing and pushing and pulling and kicking and screaming, all those sort of things. And I could have got this done earlier, not life threatening. If I had ignored it completely, it might have had some complications.
Yeah.
But certainly from the point of view of listening with your ears, but listen to your own body. So when it's telling you something, please do it now. Please say, I was in operation yesterday, got everything sorted out, and God willing, I'll be good going forward from there. But I would encourage everybody, if you are not well physically, listen to it. Listen to what it's telling you. It's telling you a story.
Yeah.
There are a couple of good books out there that will tell you your ailment. Will also have a psychological piece to it as well. So if it's a bad knee, it's probably something's going on. So do listen to it and don't ignore it.
Yeah. And that comes from just sitting quietly. That comes from not being busy all the time and not being in our head all the time.
Yeah.
And we, as we all know, we live in a world where, you know, I guess we can wear busyness like a badge of honor.
Yeah,
but it doesn't
100%.
do us any good. It really doesn't. And it's not easy. And I think we've all, many of us have reflected on COVID and how quiet things were and how calm things were and how how easy it was to spend time with our families
Mm,
and stop for a while.
mm,
But once that was all over, it was like back to rushing around, and it's hard not to. I get it, but I'm a
yeah.
great believer in just sitting quietly, taking yourself out into nature,
Yes.
and as you said, listening to ourselves, listening to what's going on around us, and the wonderful things that can come from that.
Yeah. 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 And of course, there's as much life learning and in terms of listening to people, you can upskill, you can you can learn stuff that you didn't hear before. You were too embarrassed to ask the question, those sort of things, So it is a really, really good skill, and one
Yeah.
I probably need to do better at, but certainly I'm trying. That's for sure.
I'll give you what I've learned too a little bit about, because when people say, okay, well, all very well for you, you were lucky enough to grow up with the dad who was curious, and I grew up wanting to be an actor, and I guess this all fed into my fascination
Yeah.
for people.
Yes.
But there are ways we can exercise our curiosity muscles, and
Yeah.
we live in a world where we're encouraged to wake up every morning passionate, which I think is very unsustainable. It's exhausting. I don't think you can be
Yeah.
passionate every day, but we can wake up curious, and it can be as simple as just doing something different, driving a different way to work, taking yourself to somewhere you've never been before, um, maybe starting joining a new group.
Yeah.
Those things that are going to stretch us a little bit and take us out of our comfort zone
Yes.
are going to automatically make us curious.
Yeah.
Learning a language, because you can't do that sort of thing without becoming curious. So it
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
forces you. And once you
Yes.
start, it tends to expand your world. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that's why people like to travel,
Yes.
because automatically you're switched on. You go, wow, I've never experienced this before. I've never been here before. You're
Yeah.
curious about the sights, the sounds, the people, but we can do it in our own neighborhood or our own environment. We can sort of exercise those muscles, and there's lots out there too. I mean, it's there's lots written about curiosity. So I still think it's the core of good listening. It's the core of learning. It's the core of wisdom, is curiosity. So however you find it, Google it, mate, as they say.
Yeah.
How can we build our curiosity, and I think become curious about being curious is a really
Yeah.
good way to go.
Yeah. I like that. Wake up curious. I do tend to wake up early, and I do like to be active in a hurry, but that, as you say, is not sustainable, because after a week or two of that, the body just tell you can't do it. You need a lion, just exhausted. That is a great line. Wake up curious, which I think is not a bad way for everybody to wake up. To be honest, curious about your day, curious about everybody
Yeah,
else's day, curious
curious
about the
about who you
world.
might meet, what you
Yeah.
might learn.
Yes.
It's not a bad place to be.
No. 100%. Just mindful of time, young Gareth, but I just wondered if you had something to finish this off on, the power of listening, how we can listen better. What would your final thoughts and comments be around that?
I guess my final thoughts would be, just well, it's kind of what I was saying. What can I learn? What you can, as I said, you can even be a bit selfish about this. What can I learn from this situation? Or
Yeah.
what can I learn from this person? I guess if we're talking about listening to people,
Yeah.
what can I learn from this person?
Yeah.
And I just think it's a mindset.
Yeah.
It really is. It's just a mindset. What can I learn from this?
Excellent. And the
I
willing.
think I don't think it's any more complicated than that. I just think it's, have that in your head. Just what
Yeah.
can I learn?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Young Gareth, thank you very, very much. Some gold in there. Some and that Harry Power story is a belter. I mean,
Yeah,
that's gorgeous.
yeah,
And can understand totally how when you're relating it to a group of people, it does not consume you emotionally, because that is something to be incredibly proud of, I think, because that would have set young Harry free of a lot of stuff in the back of his mind. So I think you've done a great job there, young Gareth. Very well done.
And Mick, we've all got it in us.
Yeah.
There's no, I've got no superpower. There's nothing particularly special about what I do. I guess it's just how I do it, or why I do it, or where it comes from, and that's we've all got that. We've all got it in us. We really have.
Brilliant.
Great to see you.
I might stop recording, Gareth, and then just hang on for a second after that. Fellas, I will obviously put this in the lads call, and if you got any comments, get back to me, and we'll certainly get back to you around all of that. Okay, good night, fellas. Stay well.